Sorry, not to be annoying, but we're with NBC News, and I'm just trying to figure out, is anybody here going to vote in the election on November 6th? Anybody? Anybody? Nobody's going to vote? Is anybody going to vote in the congressional election in November? You are. Thank you.
Okay, it's a basic fact of American politics. Young people are the age demographic least likely to vote. In the last midterm elections, youth turnout fell to its lowest levels on record. Meanwhile, senior citizens in midterms vote around twice the rate of young voters. And it's really not an overstatement to say that everything we know about American politics currently hinges on that imbalance. There is some indication things will be different this time around. Early voting among young voters in Texas and Georgia is up around 500% compared to 2014. A new Harvard Kennedy School poll showed that 40% of 18 to 29-year-olds said they will definitely vote on Election Day, which is up 14 points from the last midterm election. And one effort to get those young people to the polls is being spearheaded by actor and comedian Billy Eichner and the folks at Funny or Die. Glam Up the Midterms is a campaign tour traveling around the country trying to motivate young people to register and then to vote. And Billy Eichner is so dedicated to the cause, he won't stop talking about it, even when he's hounded by paparazzi at the airport.
Billy, how was Detroit? Are the midterms all glammed up?
Everyone needs to vote for Democrats.
I know. Well, I know you were upset about a certain news story today. The president is redefining gender potentially.
Not redefining. You can't redefine it. It's a fact of life. He's a piece of evil piece of. The whole administration is awful. Everyone needs to vote. You can vote now in many states. You can vote early.
Do you predict a blue wave is happening? Are people that mad, or are they apathetic and beat down?
A blue wave should happen. If enough people vote, there'll be a blue wave.
Joining me is now that guy, Billy Eichner, host of Billy on the Street, face of the Glam of the Midterms campaign. Billy, welcome.
Thank you. That was a Ruth Bader Ginsburg quote, by the way. I was just quoting her in that.
I love the fact that it was like this, like, gotcha, like, and it was like you were going to be all like stuttery, like, what do I say? It's like, well, you know what I think about all of this.
Yeah. Also, I have more experience than anyone running up to people with a microphone, so I was very prepared.
So, first, tell me about your own self with politics, because I think that people over the course of their lives, both based on what's happening in the world and where they are in their life, can wax and wane, and how politically activated they feel. How activated do you feel?
I feel I was always someone who kept in touch with what was happening in the world and followed the news, but I wasn't as engaged and as much of an activist as I became post-Trump, which is the case for many people, obviously.
Did you have that, like, wake up the next morning feeling like, oh, my word?
I was a little ahead of that. You know, I mean, I hated him the entire time. And I grew up in New York City.
Yes.
I grew up in Queens.
As did I.
Trump grew up in Queens.
Yeah.
And so I've been following Trump his whole life. And I didn't even think he was good as a reality show host, you know, let alone the president of the United States. And so I never really liked him that much. He always seemed like a fraud to me and a bit of a con artist and a performance artist, which is fine when you're performing, but not when you're the president. So when he won, I was enraged, you know, and I'm part of the LGBT community also. And I fear for my fellow LGBT people, and I fear for all of us as Americans. And that's what got me involved.
You know, so we see all this all the time, like, how do you get young people to vote? It's like this, like, Rubik's Cube everyone's trying to solve. What's your theory of the case? Like, what's your approach?
I just try to level with the young people. They're just people. We were all young ones, remember?
Once upon a time,
yeah,
sadly.
I know. So I do remember.
I looked up your age today on Wikipedia. I was like, Billy, he's young.
I'm 40.
Yeah.
I just turned 40. Right. I mean, I look amazing.
You look amazing.
I dressed up for Halloween today.
I thought 25.
I'm Lawrence O'Donnell. That's my costume. But seriously, I'm supposed to be serious. I talk to young people the way I would talk to anyone. I'm honest with them, right? And I saw so many young people at March for Our Lives events, and I saw so many young people at the Women's March, and I saw young people go with their parents and grandparents to town halls trying to save their family's health care. And my message is, if you went to those things, all of that was leading up to Election Day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? All of those things were wonderful, galvanizing events, but they don't mean as much as actually going to vote. Because if you're going to go to March for Our Lives, you have to go vote in people who are going to fight for those things that we were marching for. Otherwise, why did you go?
I think it's too, like, there are certain things in life where, like, checking tire pressure on a car, and it's like someone will be like, you should check tire pressure, and I have this feeling of like, oh, do I know how to do that? And then you do it, it's like, oh, that actually wasn't as hard as I thought.
Yeah.
I feel like it's a thing that people, if you're not habituated to it, if you haven't done it before, feels maybe like it's a harder thing to do, or there's more obstacles because we put obstacles in front of people than it is.
And one of the things I set out to do with Glam Up the Midterms is that all the events we have, I come out and I say, look, there were elections in my 20s I didn't vote during.
Right.
You know, you have to admit it.
Yes.
And that's true for all of us. Maybe not you, because you're Chris Hayes and you work at MSNBC. But, like, you know, in college, many people don't vote. Most people don't vote. So let's embrace that fact and let's admit that it's the wrong way to be, and that we are now living with the consequences of not enough people voting, or people not voting because they're not in love with the candidate or whatever they're looking for.
I mean, it really is a crazy fact about America that we have like a functional gerontocracy in which senior citizens like punch above their weight, but like to the ratio of 2 to 1. Like they control state legislatures because they come out of midterms.
I know, and there have been a lot of voting campaigns called Vote or Die.
Right.
I'm like, call it Vote and Die,
right?
Because all the people voting are like 1,000 years old.
Which, by the way, we love seniors.
Of course we do. Of course we do. But you know,
love bubbies. We love papas and nanas.
Yeah, exactly. I love old Democrats.
Right.
But you know, we need young people to come out and vote. Otherwise, their interests won't be represented. And the fact is, young people have jobs. Money's taken out of their paychecks to pay Congress, to pay people in Washington, the way it is for anyone at any age. So why shouldn't they have a say in what those people are going to go and do once they get there?
What have you've been going around the country, going to different events?
Yeah.
Right? What are the events like? What do you do?
Everything's a little bit different. You know, we did an event in Phoenix with Human Rights Campaign. Did one in Detroit with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Did one with
Blake Griffin go to that?
He
one?
did.
That was awesome.
Blake Griffin was there.
Yeah.
And Wanda Sykes was there. We did an event with Joe Biden at the Culinary Workers Union in Vegas. You know, we went all around, but my message is the same, and that's, you know, if you're worried about school shootings among young people, you ask young people what issues they're concerned about, they're worried about getting shot in school. You know, this is not a joke. I'm a comedian, but this is not a joke. Well, I tell those people, you might be alienated from voting. You may have never voted before. There's one party that's not going to do anything about gun safety reform, ever, because they've been bought and sold by the National Rifle Association. There's another party that might be wants to, if we get enough of them in power, so that they feel that they have a support system there in order to do it. That party happens to be called the Democratic Party. I wish it wasn't a nonpartisan issue. Life and death should not be a nonpartisan issue, but in America today, it is. That's where we are.
And there is that way in which the feeling, the emotion you get from a rally or a march, or like being at the Women's March and March for Our Lives, or in moments of intense activism that happens on campus sometimes, is not the same as the feeling of going to a voting booth. Although it has its own kind of, I always find a sort of certain pleasant kind of civic ritual to it. But it's that politics is sort of both, can be really inspiring sometimes, and partly is just like the, you know, the workaday work.
Well, my final message leading up to the final weekend of early voting and then election day is don't go by yourself to go vote. Make it a social event. Take your friends. We need your friends to vote too. If you're watching Chris Hayes right now, you're probably going to vote. So we need you, regardless of your age, to go out there and bring your like-minded friends with you. And then, I don't know, go get a drink, put it on Instagram. You know, you put everything else on Instagram. You're on Instagram.
Even I am on Instagram.
You're chronicling your workouts every day. I mean, that's how bad things have gotten in this country.
Just trying to keep it together in these dark times.
You need to. It's important to keep yourself healthy.
You got to keep it together. I mean, I think part of it too is peer pressure also works. Like people who are around folks that vote, it becomes like, oh, that's a thing that people do. And if you're around folks that don't vote, then why would I vote? And so, if you are a voter, if you're watching this, and you should talk to people that that you know and love who aren't, because you can be like, hey, this is what I'm doing.
I always say to people, you know, I'm very impressed by what Taylor Swift has done. Seriously,
I honestly think she's been
massive effect.
Sort of brilliant.
You can't even debate that, regardless of whether you're a fan of her music or not. This has been an incredible step that she's taken. But whether you have 1 follower or 100 million follower, these races are going to come down to a handful of votes. The other thing is, especially among young people, they were very disillusioned by Hillary winning more votes but ultimately losing the election. So what I explain sounds very obvious to you and me, but what I say is there's no electoral college this time. We'll have to deal with that again next time. But for right now, your vote really does count.
No, there will be, on election night, there will be congressional races that come down to 100 votes.
Absolutely.
No question.
I mean, every vote really does count.
All right, Billy Eichner. Hey, come back anytime.
I would love to. And by the way, for the record, I love old people, and that was just a joke.
We love all people.
Unless you watch Fox News of any age. age.
I love people that watch anything. I love everyone. Basically.
I don't like people who watch Fox
That's
News.
my message. All right. Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.